What if I told you that every bit of struggle in your life, every frustration, every heartbreak, every failure has one root cause: resistance? And what if the way to end all struggle wasn't to fight harder, plan better, or push through, but to do the exact opposite? To stop resisting. To let go. Lao Tzu, the legendary Chinese philosopher, gave us a blueprint for this over 2,500 years ago. It's called the Tao, or the Way, and it's not just a philosophy, it's a way of being. By the end of this video, you'll see how Lao Tzu's simple insight can transform how you approach your goals, relationships, and even life's hardest challenges. You'll learn how to flow with life instead of fighting against it. But before we go deeper, let me ask you something. What are you struggling with right now? Is it money? Love? Fear of failure? And are you sure that the struggle itself is necessary? Or could it be that you're clinging to an idea of how things should be, instead of embracing how they really are? We live in a world that worships effort. From the moment we're born, we're told that success comes to those who hustle, who grind, who struggle endlessly to climb the ladder of life. But here's the truth. No one wants to admit effort alone doesn't guarantee success. Think about the times in your life when you tried your hardest and still fell short. Was it because you didn't try enough? Or could it be that you were swimming against the current, fighting a battle that didn't need to be fought? Lao Tzu teaches us that life is like water. Water is soft, yet it carves mountains. It's gentle, yet it fills the deepest oceans. Why? Because water never resists, it flows. When it encounters an obstacle, it doesn't force its way through, it moves around, adapting to the shape of whatever contains it. And here's the profound insight: you and I are like water. We are meant to flow, not to struggle. But somewhere along the way we forgot how. Let me ask you, when was the last time you felt truly at ease? Not because everything was perfect, but because you stopped trying to control everything. Do you remember that feeling? That's flow, and it's our natural state. But we lose it when we resist, when we cling to what we can't have, or fight against what we can't change.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Resistance, at its core, is the refusal to accept reality as it is. It's when we demand that life conform to our expectations instead of adapting to life's natural rhythms. Lao Tzu puts it beautifully: if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. If you are not afraid of dying, there is nothing you cannot achieve. Let's break this down. The first part is about impermanence. Everything in life changes: your body, your relationships, your circumstances. The problem: we cling to things as if they'll last forever. We fight to keep what's slipping away. But what if we didn't? What if we embraced change instead of resisting it? Imagine holding sand in your hand. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you relax your hand, the sand stays. Life works the same way. The harder you cling, the more you lose. The second part of Lao Tzu's insight is about fear, specifically the fear of loss. Most of our struggles come from this fear. We fear losing our job, our relationships, our reputation. And yet, these things are never truly ours to begin with. The irony is, the more we fear losing something, the more power we give it over us. What if instead we trusted that life would provide exactly what we need when we need it? That's not passivity, it's wisdom. It's flow. Let's explore this idea of trust. Trust is the foundation of flow. It's the belief that, like water, life knows where it's going, even if we don't. But trusting life isn't easy, is it? Especially when things fall apart. When you lose your job, or your partner leaves, or your plans crumble, the instinct is to panic, to grab the wheel and steer harder. But Lao Tzu reminds us, by letting it go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go. But when you try, the world is beyond winning. Think about a time in your life when something unexpected happened. Maybe you lost something you thought you couldn't live without, only to find that it made space for something better. Or maybe you faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable, only to realize later that it was exactly what you needed to grow. Life has a way of working itself out when we stop trying to control it. The question is, can you trust the process even when it doesn't make sense? But let's be real, letting go is terrifying. It feels like giving up, like admitting defeat. But here's the paradox: letting go isn't about giving up, it's about giving in. It's about surrendering to the flow of life. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that the river always finds its way to the ocean. The more you trust, the less you struggle. And the less you struggle, the more life flows. This brings us to the present moment. Lao Tzu says, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. The present moment is where flow happens. But most of us miss it because we're too busy reliving the past or worrying about the future. We replay old mistakes in our minds, wishing we could change them. Or we obsess over what's next, trying to control outcomes that haven't even happened yet. But here's the truth: the past is gone, and the future isn't here. The only place life exists is now. And now is where freedom begins. So let me ask you, where are you right now? Are you here fully present? Or are you somewhere else, lost in thought, trapped in worry, clinging to something that no longer exists? If you're not here, what's keeping you away? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you let it go? Let's bring this back to flow. Flow isn't about doing nothing, it's about doing the right thing at the right time. It's about aligning yourself with the natural rhythm of life instead of fighting against it. Imagine a surfer riding a wave. They don't control the wave, they adapt to it. They move with it, not against it. And because of this, they experience something magical: effortlessness. This is what Lao Tzu means when he says, do nothing, and nothing is left undone. It's not about being passive, it's about being present. So how do we apply this to our lives? How do we flow through relationships, work, and even our deepest fears? The answer is deceptively simple: stop resisting. Stop clinging to what's gone. Stop fearing what's to come. And start trusting that life will carry you exactly where you need to go. It may not be where you want to go, but it will always be where you need to be. Here's the invitation: let go. Just for a moment, let go of the need to control, to fix, to figure everything out. Take a deep breath. Feel the air enter your lungs and leave again. Notice that you don't have to force it, it happens naturally. This is flow. This is freedom. And this is your true nature. But we're just getting started. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the practical side of flow. How do we let go when life feels overwhelming? How do we trust when everything seems uncertain? And how do we find freedom in a world that constantly demands more from us? Let's get real for a second. Life doesn't slow down just because you decide to let go. The bills still need to be paid. Deadlines still loom. People still disappoint you. So how do we reconcile Lao Tzu's wisdom with the chaos of our everyday lives? How do we flow when everything feels like it's pulling us in 100 directions at once? It starts with understanding a simple truth: most of the chaos isn't out there, it's in here. It's in the stories we tell ourselves about how things should be. It's in the endless mental chatter, the second guessing, the overthinking. Lao Tzu calls this the mind's disease. He says, if you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. If you overvalue status, you create competition. If you overvalue plans, you invite disorder. Think about it. The more you insist on controlling everything, the more out of control life feels. You've probably experienced this. You plan every detail of a trip, and suddenly a flight gets canceled. You rehearse a conversation in your head, and the other person says something you didn't expect. When we cling to rigid plans and expectations, we create tension, and tension is the enemy of flow. The paradox is this: the less you hold on, the more life works in your favor. Lao Tzu's insight isn't about doing nothing, it's about doing less of the wrong things. Most of our struggles come from pushing when we should pause, from forcing when we should wait. So the question becomes, can you act without forcing? Can you move without struggling? Let's break this down with something practical. Imagine you're trying to solve a problem, a big one. Maybe it's a career decision, a fight with your partner, or a financial crisis. What's your first instinct? You probably try to think your way through it. You analyze every angle, make lists, weigh pros and cons. But the more you think, the more confused you feel. The harder you push, the further away the answer seems. Why? Because clarity doesn't come from forcing, it comes from stillness. Lao Tzu says, "Muddy water, let stand, it becomes clear the wisdom here is profound." When you're caught in chaos, the best thing you can do isn't to act, is to wait. Let the mud settle. Let the water clear. Answers don't come from panic, they come from patience. And this isn't passivity, it's precision. It's knowing when to move and when to pause. So the next time you're overwhelmed, try this stop. Not forever, not even for long. Just stop long enough to let the mental noise settle. You'll be surprised how often the solution rises to the surface on its own without you having to force it. But what about situations where waiting isn't an option? What if you need to act now? This is where Lao Tzu's concept of Wu Wei comes in. The phrase is often translated as non-action, but that's misleading. It doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means effortless action, acting in harmony with the flow of life, rather than against it. Think of a master archer. They don't grip the bow with tension. They don't yank the string with brute force. Their movements are fluid, precise, almost effortless, and because of this, they hit the target. This is Wu Wei, acting with ease, not because the task is easy, but because you're aligned with it. Now, apply this to your own life. When you're working on something important, are you forcing it? Are you trying to will your way to success, squeezing every drop of energy into the outcome? Or are you approaching it with focus and ease, trusting that the right effort at the right time will yield results? Lao Tzu reminds us, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. What would it look like for you to stop hurrying? To stop rushing towards some imagined finish line and simply take the next step, and the next, and the next. Of course, this is easier said than done. One of the biggest obstacles to flow is fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. And fear has a way of paralyzing us, of making us cling even tighter to control. But here's the thing: fear doesn't stop bad things from happening. It stops you from living fully. Lao Tzu says, a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. This isn't just about physical travel, it's about how we move through life. When you're consumed by fear, you're obsessed with the destination. You're so focused on avoiding failure or securing success that you miss the journey entirely. But when you let go of the need to arrive, something shifts. You stop being driven by fear, and you start being guided by curiosity. Ask yourself this: what are you so afraid of losing? And is it possible that your fear is the very thing keeping you stuck? Let's bring this back to the idea of trust. Trusting life doesn't mean everything will go your way. It doesn't mean you'll never fail or face hardship. Trust isn't about guarantees, it's about resilience. It's about knowing that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to adapt, to learn, to grow. Think of a tree in a storm. The rigid branches snap under pressure, but the flexible ones bend. They bend because they trust the wind. They don't resist it, they move with it. And because of this, they survive. You and I are no different. When we resist life, we break. But when we trust it, we bend. And in bending, we find strength. Now, let's talk about one of the hardest things to flow through relationships. People are unpredictable. They disappoint us. They hurt us. They don't meet our expectations. And the instinct is often to control, to try to change them, fix them, or mold them into who we think they should be. But Lao Tzu reminds us, when you let go of what you are, you become what you might be. When you let go of what you have, you receive what you need. What if the same is true for relationships? What if letting go of control doesn't mean losing someone, but finding a deeper connection? Instead of trying to force someone to be who you want them to be, what if you accepted them as they are? That doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior. It means understanding that love isn't about ownership. It's about freedom. What would happen if you stopped trying to control the people in your life and instead focused on being the best version of yourself? How might your relationships change if you let go of expectations and simply allowed them to unfold naturally? There's a quiet power in letting go. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting with intention, but without attachment. It means trusting the process, even when you don't understand it. So here's the challenge: can you let go of one thing today? Just one. Maybe it's a grudge you've been holding. Maybe it's an outcome you've been obsessing over. Maybe it's the idea that you need to have everything figured out. Let it go and see what happens. You might find that life flows more easily than you ever imagined. But we're not done yet. In the final part, we'll move from theory to action. How do you build a life that's rooted in flow? How do you align your daily choices with Lao Tzu's timeless wisdom? And how do you create freedom not just for yourself, but for everyone around you? Let's talk about what it means to live in flow, not as a fleeting experience, but as a way of life. Lao Tzu's wisdom isn't just something to think about, it's something to embody in every choice you make. So how do you take these ideas of flow, trust, and letting go and apply them to the messy, unpredictable reality of daily life? The first step is simplicity. Lao Tzu teaches, I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, and compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Simplicity doesn't mean stripping everything away or living without ambition. It means knowing what truly matters and focusing your energy there. Look at your life right now. How much of your stress comes from chasing things you don't really need? The approval of people who don't care. A goal that doesn't align with your values. A lifestyle that's more about appearances than fulfillment. What would your life look like if you simplified it? What could you let go of to make space for what matters most? Next is patience. We live in a culture obsessed with speed, instant results, constant productivity, everything now. But life doesn't work that way. Growth takes time. Healing takes time. Success, real success, takes time. Lao Tzu reminds us nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Can you trust that things will unfold at the right time, even if it's not your timeline? Can you resist the urge to rush and instead focus on doing what's right in the moment? Finally, there's compassion. Not just for others, but for yourself. Flow isn't about perfection, it's about showing up as you are, flaws and all. When you make mistakes, and you will, can you forgive yourself? When others let you down, can you respond with understanding instead of control? This is what it means to live in flow, to simplify, to trust, to act with compassion. It's not always easy, but the rewards are profound. When you stop resisting life, you find freedom. When you stop clinging, you find peace. And when you start flowing, you realize that life has always been carrying you exactly where you need to go.